Today I'm going to show you the process for removing the front side fairings on a Suzuki V-Strom 800. I'm just going to remove one side panel in this video, but the process is the same for both side panels, and I have the 21-inch front wheel DE version of the V-Strom, but as far as I can see, the panel on the road biased RE version is identical, so this should work with both of the V-Strom 800s. And finally, I'll try to go fairly slowly and use clips that are long enough so that you can pause the video at each step of the way. To start with, you will need a 4mm Allen or hex key, a Phillips head screwdriver, and something thin and strong like a Stanley blade. The first panel to remove is the front tank cover, which is held in place by two bolts that take a 4mm hex bit. There's no Loctite on either of these bolts, but the left-hand side bolt on my bike was really stiff, so it did need a fair amount more encouragement than the other bolt. You will also need to remove two push rivets that are at the front of the panel. They don't have the central push section, so you'll need something flat and thin to wedge them off. I used the Stanley knife blade and they came off pretty easily, but if you do that, you do need to be careful not to scratch the paintwork. The panel is held on with two patches of Velcro, so when you're trying to remove it, it might feel like you've missed a fixing, but all it needs is a gentle pull. Next up is the underside of the beak, which is held in place by four push rivets, one on each corner. You just push the centre of the rivets in to disengage these, and I use the 4mm hex key to do so. Then you pull the rivets out one by one and they should come out very easily. I found this particular plastic section took a little bit of a pull, but it didn't feel like it was going to break, so you can be on the firmer side of gentle. With the black underside panel out of the way then, the top part of the beak is held in place by two more push rivets at the back of the panel, so you'll need to pop them out in the same way as before, taking care not to drop and lose them. Then there are two sliding fixings at the front. To remove the front fixings, you need to push the centre part in to disengage them, then slide the fixing towards the engine and remove the fixing completely, at which point the beak should come free. Next, you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove one screw on the outside of the panel. Again, there's no Loctite on this screw or any of the fixings for that matter, so it should come out with a gentle turn. Then there are three more Phillips head screws on the inside of that panel. There's loads of access here, and the only thing to watch out for is the front forks, because they do mark up really easily if you touch them with anything metal. So if you have a metal screwdriver, just watch the back of that screwdriver when you're undoing these. There's one more bolt on the outside of the panel in the bottom corner, and again you'll need a 4mm Allen key. Now, even with the crash bars in place, access was pretty easy, so again there should be no need to remove the crash bars. It's worth noting that this bolt is slightly shorter than the two tank cover bolts, so make a mental note to put the right ones back in the right holes when you refit the fairing. And the final fixing to remove is an XL pop rivet on the inside of the fairing. I couldn't get my camera in to film this, but it was a bit of a pig to remove, and mine took a lot of encouragement to dislodge. Although in theory, like all the other pop rivets, you just need to push the centre part to disengage it, then pull the rivet out, so yours might not put up so much of a fight. That then is all of the fixings removed, so now you're left with the hard part. Now, I didn't find you need to remove the crash bars, but it probably would help to do so, especially when it comes to getting the fairing panel completely out of the way, which you'll see in a moment. I took a solid 10 minutes trying to get the fairing off, and it will feel like it's anchored in place by a fixing that you haven't yet removed. But that's not the case, and the trick is just knowing the anchor points for the panel. The rearmost end sits on the radiator with two locating pins to the rear of the panel that slide out very easily, and there's a sticky outy bit at the top of that section too that you should take note of. But there are also two right angle fixing points at the front of the fairing right at the top, and these are the bits that were very tight on my bike. In theory, to disengage those two fixing points, you just need to tilt the back of the panel upwards as you pull the fairing forwards away from the engine. Now, I tried being gentle and using that technique for a solid 10 minutes before ultimately resorting to brute force, and ultimately it then came away with a decent bit of a wiggle. Yours might not be quite so stiff, but the panel is built quite strong, so while I'm sure it is possible to break it if you pull or twist it in the wrong place, it didn't feel like it was going to break when I was pulling it quite hard. Putting the panel back on is obviously just the same process in reverse, so I won't show you that, but what I will say is that it went on a lot easier than it came off. There's a written guide to this process that I'll link in the video description too, but please feel free to ask any questions you have down below. And if you found this video useful, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more V-Strom goodness. And until next time, ride safe.